Blessed and highly favored. Have you heard those terms? What do you think about when you hear those terms? Blessed and highly favored. I am blessed and highly favored. When I hear those terms, I think of a misunderstanding about God. I think that there is this idea somewhere in humanity and in some religions that some of us are highly favored. When in fact the truth is all of us are highly favored. Because we come from the source of our being. And there is nothing one can do to get out of sync with that favor. Not one thing that you could do to get out of sync with that favor so that it is not flowing to you, in you, through you, and as you. Sure, we can step out of alignment with it so that we're not experiencing it, so that we're not aware of its presence. But I do not believe there is any such creator or creative force or divine mind that would take some of its expression and give to it, and others remove from that gift and from that favor. Just like the old saying goes, the sun shines on everyone. It does not judge. You can't sit out in the midst of the sun and go, oh, I got some, but you don't. Let me just put up a barrier. No, the sun doesn't go, wait, let me give this person a little bit of sun and you get a little bit less and you get just a little too much, so that burns your skin. Blessed and highly favored. Today we are on the third Sunday of Advent, of our Advent series. And the third Sunday is about love. Now, love is a word that is used so frequently, right? We can often get lost in the meaning of the word love and the depth of the word love, and even more importantly, the practice of divine love and what it really means, what it really looks like. I think that from the work I do and the life I've had and the people I've presenced, I think that most harm in relationship and in interpersonal experience comes from unintentional actions. It comes from things that are just under the radar, if you know what I mean. Like someone's a little bit clueless about how to show up or what love looks like. Someone's not quite done their work or not developed high levels or even moderate levels of healthy communication systems. Someone's not aware of you and really who you are and how you operate. And it's usually benign as far as its intention. Most harm is under the radar. Things we're not aware of that we do, that someone else does, we're not aware that we do that hurt someone. Maybe more accurately, things that we fail to do or inadvertently omit because we're unaware that their presence makes such a difference. We're unaware that the presence of loving action, conscious action, mindful action makes such a difference. There is a man who was discussing with his wife and having an experience about their daughter, and the man said that he had some anxiety because he told the daughter that he would be there in the morning when she woke up. And he realized that he might not be able to make that happen this particular morning, and so he had some anxiety about that and some drama in the mind, and he made it home. He came home in the morning. He made it to the space just after the daughter was awake. And he said to his wife, "Did she ask? Because I promised her last night I would be here when she woke up. Did she ask for me? Did she notice that I wasn't there that second, but I'm here now? Did she notice?" And the mother said, no, she didn't mention it. She didn't mention it. And the father said, ugh, all this drama in my head, like I just went through that anxiety and I'm so stupid and I wonder what's wrong with me. Why do I do that? And the mother said, that's not drama. That's wisdom. That's mindfulness. That's conscious parenting. And that's teaching her that you stand with your word and that she matters. And it makes a difference. So many things are under the radar. Did you have things growing up that hurt you that no one even knows about? Maybe they were omissions. Maybe a parent never said, I love you, or gave you a kiss on the crown of your head. Maybe no one took you out for special one-on-one time to get to know you as an individual rather than part of a whole system. Maybe you didn't feel heard. There are a lot of dynamics that happen in family systems, no? As we journey along the spiritual path, generally that journey includes some family of origin healing. And when I say family of origin, it doesn't have to just mean the family of origin. It's like your childhood experiences from 0 to 4 to 8 to 10. It's that whole realm of what you start piling hurt on that as a person on the path of awakening, you begin to realize when you're older and you have some sort of an experience that doesn't seem that big, but all of a sudden you're jacked up, you're triggered, you're crying, or you're angry, you're lashing out, or you're depressing your spirit. And you realize there's something more here. And you start unfolding the layers, peeling off the layers of the onion, going, when was the last time I felt like this? When was the last time I felt like this? Getting to the point where you seek the first time you received this message. This message that you were unworthy. This message that you were not important. This message that you were not good enough. This message that you were invisible. This message that you were too visible. Fill in the blank. In some families, they teach each other that relationships are disposable. If you disappoint someone, if you don't show up the way someone wants you to, they cut you off. They put you out. In other families, you're not allowed to have feelings or reactions to each other. There's no working through these things. They're not even acknowledged, so relationships stay on the surface level. But they tend to not have much conflict, which is nice. But they can't handle it. In other instances, they may have depth of relationship, but still can't handle the conflict. How much of our parenting, grandparenting, living in relationship, living in marriage, living in family has to do with things and hurt that is under the radar? Were you allowed to communicate about your feelings? Was there space for conflict? To know that conflict doesn't mean abandonment? That conflict doesn't have to be the scariest flag that's flying? Was there attack? What did it look like? Can anyone handle conflict? Can humanity handle conflict? Countries clearly don't handle conflict very well. Politics, government, clearly can't handle that much conflict. Within our own beings, can we handle conflict? You would think we'd have a conflict university by now, with the way we are challenged in this human condition by conflict. And I'm not talking about someone who says, well, I do conflict really well. I don't have any in my life. That's not what we're talking about here. Maybe we don't have conflict because we're masterful at breathing through conflict, being the space for conflict. But maybe we don't have conflict because we avoid it, because we shun it, because we remove ourselves from it, or we willingly will not engage in it. But what happens when we have conflict? When we have discord, when we feel like we are separate from love in a moment, when we are not feeling love in a moment, in an experience, how do we show up? How do we show up in our inner landscape? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Do we start to bury ourselves, dig a hole and get down in it? Do we start sending slingshots to the perpetrators? Do we become depressed? What do we do when conflict arises? Do we project? Do we enroll others in our drama? Come to the mama, I got drama. Come with me, my advocates. I need you down here with me to remind me I'm worthy, to remind me they're all crazy. What do you do? What do I do when we experience conflict? There was a post that Frank Ferranti, who is the man in the film May I Be Frank. We had him as part of one of our summer film series, and he came here to visit us, and he is just a great fella. He's funny. He's quite smart, and he is deep, deep, deep. And he shared on a social media conversation, he shared about a woman who wanted a response from him as a conscious male. A conscious male, could you respond to this? And he just, you could just imagine Frank belting out laughing. Me, a conscious male? That's funny. Frank has a history, and in this film it documents his history with addiction, his history with eating and being overweight, his history with depression, and healing that, and having a journey, a human and spiritual journey to heal that. Anyway, in his post, when he gives his response about being a conscious male and what authenticity looks like in this day and age, he shares this story about being at a restaurant, and he has some funny words that he shares when he talks about this restaurant. It's like, and the server, it's like this new agey kind of place, very connected. Let me find out about your spiritual practice. So anyway, they ask him as they seat him something about his spiritual practice, like how are you, or where are you in your spiritual practice? Where are you currently in your spiritual practice? And if you know Frank, you can just imagine this response. And he said he closed his eyes while his eyeballs rolled way back in his eyes. And then when he opened them, he said, and I could use this word on Sunday morning, but I just want to love on you today, so I won't. He said, well, I am this for much less time, much less frequently. And then you could fill in the blank. I am much less frequently for much shorter periods of time. That was his nutshell of an answer. And that was his answer about awakening. And then he goes on in this writing to talk about what it means to be a conscious being. And he shares that, he has kind of like a Baha attitude around the word spiritual and around spirituality, saying that, that needs defining. Spirituality needs defining. Do you hear what he's saying here? It's like you could call yourself spiritual or religious, and you could be showing up in the world pretty ugly, right? I mean, is that pretty agreed upon? That spiritual and religious people can also be, we won't call them ugly or ourselves ugly in those states. We'll call the actions ugly, right? It can have an ugly appearance. We can have an ugly appearance when we come from righteousness, when we come from a solidified idea of our superiority, or we can come from this top down, like I am so far above everyone and let me talk down to you, oh little one, right? And so he says it's not really spirituality we're talking about. That needs defining. He said this is about being human. That doesn't need defining. Be human. If we could all be a little more human, which we could also interpret as being humane, being charitable, being conscious, expressing love. But not love that has human limitations, right? A love that's beyond our human limitations. A love that is human, but I would say even coming from our divine nature. Can we raise the bar on what it means to be human? Can we raise that bar? Step into mindfulness around it. You know, a lot of people, when they're getting married, pick one particular passage from Scripture. Do you know what it is? The gift of love. 1 Corinthians 13, the gift of love. The gift of love. Now, you've probably heard it like this. 1 Corinthians 13, the gift of love. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and angels, but I do not have love, I am a noisy gong or clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come and end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we are only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we shall see face to face. Now I know only in part. Then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three. And the greatest of these is love. This passage is celebrated. It is probably one of the most widely shared passages in Scripture. People often have it at their wedding. And then how do people react when they get hurt? Most people take this as a wedding vow or a relationship vow. Most people even have this as a high family value of how to show up. But most of us don't know how to practice it. Most of us, most commonly, fail at even the slightest courtesy of grace. The ego comes up, even if no one ever knows about it, right? Even if we never tell anyone. The ego comes up. When we get hurt, things happen inside. We become petty. We become resentful. Some people become vindictive. Some people become disturbed. Some people lash out. Some people lash in. So what does this have for us? The love that we're being called to in this scripture, it's not a human love. In the King James Version, a lot of people don't know this, but in the King James Version, it doesn't use the word love. Do you know what it uses? Charity. The word charity. And if you go back to the original Greek, the word that is used, translated into English as charity, is aligned with the word agape. And that's the divine love. Charity is defined as generosity and helpfulness, especially towards the needy or suffering. But friends, whenever we are injured, we are the needy and the suffering. Whenever we see someone else injured, we hurt them, whether or not it was inadvertent or intentional. They are the needy and the suffering. But so often, those are the moments when we fail in generosity and helpfulness. We become invested in our own salvation, in our own lifting up, in relieving our own suffering, getting our own way, or resolving the conflict for ourselves. And we forget this divine call to step into charity and allow that process to be the healing, to be the portal through which we move into harmony within our own beings and among each other. That charity is archaic Christian love. It represents the love between the source and its expression. You could say the love between God and God's creation, and the love back from God's creation back to God. We know in unity consciousness that it is the power of love itself flowing, but it's that power of love that has no opposite. It is agape love. It's that love that does not account for things, does not make measure of things, does not need anything from anything else. There was a parent on the playground, I've probably shared this story before, and her son was playing and another kid did something that, you're not supposed to do on the playground, right? And the kid came up to the parent and said, they were supposed to do that. They need to say they're sorry. They did it wrong, They hurt me, and the parent saw it. And she came over to her son, and she leaned down as he's crying and trying to get this other child to be accountable, and the other child is what? Doing what we all do right after we get married and we say those love vows. The child's going, I'm not going to say I'm sorry. I'm off playing on another thing. Have fun. Have fun healing yourself. Have fun figuring that out. You get nothing from me. And the mom came up to her son and she said, you don't need anything from him to feel better. There is nothing you need to get from anyone else to take care of yourself right now, to feel better. You've got this. What a lesson to get at such an age. How many of us have spent so much energy in our lives, emotional, spiritual, mental, trying to get understanding so that we can feel love? Are we willing to let that go? That doesn't mean being willing to let go of wanting love. It means, are we willing to step into charity and agape love? The King James Version. Though I speak with the tongues of men and angels and have not charity, I become as sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I can remove mountains and have not charity, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. Charity suffereth long, and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemingly, seek not her own, is not easily provoked, thinks no evil, rejoices not in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Charity never fails, but whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Where there be tongues, they shall cease. Where there be knowledge, it shall vanish away. For we know in part, and we prophesy as a child. We know in part, but that which is perfect comes, then that which is in part shall be done away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I understood like a child, I thought like a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as also I am known. And now abides faith, hope, charity, these three. But the greatest of these is charity. Can we move into that generosity of spirit, doing our inner work? If you just think for a moment of how it would be if we sat in our hope that we could get everyone to wake up, that we could get everyone around us to understand us, that we could get all parents to parent their children with consciousness and sensitivity, with grace. Does that feel overwhelming? Does that feel daunting to think that we need to wait to experience love, to harmonize relationships, to have world peace? Wait till everyone gets it? We've been waiting a long time, haven't we? We've been waiting a long time, and that idea of being truly blessed and highly favored, comes from a false idea that somehow it's God that's doing the hard things to us, when in fact it's our lack of humanity that is often what makes life difficult. Amen? It's often that there is no school of life, there is not a university of compassion or charity where we learn about relationships and we learn about our source and what we are here to do and be. If anyone's had relationships realizations, if anyone's had the deep work and engaged in the deep practice, you have certainly no doubt realized that there is someone, if not multiple people in your life who you felt a lack of love from and you felt hurt by, that after doing this work, you are on your knees in gratitude, just not on your knees in the traditional way, on your knees in just like beauty, silence, gratitude for the sacred, that you woke up to this at this time. Grateful that maybe they're still on the planet and you can shift your part. Maybe they're in their freedom form, but the healing came when you got it. That this whole time, they have been trying to love you. And the hurt that happened in between you was under the radar. It was under the radar. It wasn't intentional. And you then have the opportunity to develop your capacity to translate love languages. and to see all the love that was there all of the time so that you can receive it. And to be generous in your forgiving, generous in giving before, for all of the things that are unseen, all of the things that one did not know. Each one of us as parents and as children have things that hurt us that we probably never told a soul, right? Did your children tell you all of the things that hurt? Have you told your parents all of the things that hurt? The beautiful gift of agape love is that we don't need to. Not everyone needs to become emotionally intelligent to experience wholeness and love. We just need a practice. We need a practice of mindfulness. Eric Butterworth, one of Unity's greatest authors and ministers, said that we do not fall in love. We are to rise in love. We are to rise in love. So can we engage in letting go of the idea that we need to even fix everyone or fix ourselves in order to experience agape love, and recognize that it is something that is given and cannot be taken away? Can we become aware of our triggers, our habits, all of our stuff, and yes, keep growing ourselves. Yes, keep having deep conversations with those we love so that we can see with different eyes and be more gracious and generous towards one another. But can we step into our practice of charity and agape love? And can we engage in mindfulness? Stephen Fuller, in the book What's Beyond Mindfulness, has a lot of wisdom to share, and I want to share that with you. Because it can be daunting and overwhelming to think, oh, but my experiences are, or that one's been here for a long time. But what are we going to take into the new year with us? What resentments and what hurts are going to grow with us through yet another season and yet another year? And what ones will be laid to rest? What ones will just have a new sense of gentleness and spaciousness around them? Stephen says this. He says, with empathy, we can get a sense of what's going on behind the screen of the other's eyes and know where they're coming from, even if we disagree with their views. Empathy is the kind of intuitive and emotional knowing that reaches inside the other, inside the well-manicured public face, inside the mask that we all wear to face the outside world. It is a knowing that is nonverbal, non-conceptual, non-cerebral. It is beyond time. This is the gift that we can activate that will surpass needing to enroll in the university of life, needing to understand and know and have all the conversations about where others are and how they experience us, and try to jump through all of the hoops of loving each other mindfully. He talks about how often people feel like they can't understand each other or can't get through to each other. And he says, in those situations, we can feel completely helpless, frustrated with our inability to know what someone close to us is feeling. And we don't know how to develop that power. He goes on to say, learning to be more empathetic is as much about removing blockages as learning emotional intelligence and intuition. One of the best ways to both develop empathy and remove blocks is mindful meditation. This is the practice of paying mindful attention to what is really happening in the present moment, rather than to our comments and thoughts about it. Mindfulness meditation can be practiced by careful and persistent attention to the simple exercises of life that are usually missed. He talks about paying attention to birds and the breeze and trees. From there, he says, we can move into the world of feelings, paying a similar, close and caring attention to the peaks and valleys of the inner emotional landscape of our life. We embrace with our awareness all the range, from ecstasy to misery and everything in between. Intimacy with this territory in our inner world will help us become familiar with the inner world of others. We will know what's behind someone's eyes when they look at us, pleading for understanding and contact, because we will have seen it behind our own eyes. Mindfulness practice is anyway as much about an outside as inside. It is not a withdrawal, but an engagement. The feelings, presence, and expression of the being of another is as much place for mindfulness as ourselves. He goes on to say we can also train ourselves to be more empathetic by being interested and curious about others as we go through our daily life. It simply needs an intention. He goes on to say we get out of our comfort zone. We need to get out of the comfort zone to jump out of our perpetual self-concern and self-importance and let others in. He says suddenly this meeting will become a spiritual experience for you. Just watch how it changes the atmosphere. Your heart responds to others if you can totally be there for them when they tell you their story. There is nothing that can bring you as close to someone as deeply listening to their honest expression of the suffering they are going through. Listen deeply, drop perpetual self-interest and self-obsession, and let your heart resonate with the experience of others. See how your heart expands. Empathy drives compassion, and compassion drives empathy. Eric Butterworth says it like this in his writing called Be a Center of Love. He says, Edwin Markham reveals a dynamic formula. He drew a circle that shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in. Eric Butterworth says, you may have been shut out by people, nations, and ideologies that may have erected barriers. But in the new age, one must have the wit to draw a larger circle of love, to include and bless persons and groups of persons. If you are surrounded by any conflict, don't slip back into the black and white concept of right and wrong. When you become judgmental, no matter what you say you stand for, you are on the side of the problem. Instead, be an active onlooker. Dissolve your concern in a time of quiet meditation. And then in your mind's eye, draw a circle around the whole scene, including yourself. All parties, all sides will come into your sanctuary of consciousness. Here you will easily overwhelm them with a love that will dissolve differences and open the way to understanding communication. The world needs the radiation of your love, but don't delude yourself that the world needs your religion. Amen. Don't become a proselytizer, a missionary zealot for truth. The world needs unity, not theology. Many persons have accepted truth through their emotions, and thus all your logic or scriptural or scientific authority will be of little avail. It is useless to appeal to a person's mind if his heart has no part in shaping the convictions to which he so tenaciously holds. Become an instrument of love. Many think that the practice of truth is in passing out pamphlets on the streets or in crassly voicing metaphysical platitudes in a completely unreceptive conversational group. There is a better way. Be a meta-missionary, dealing with seeing things or people right instead of the misguided effort to set them right. Certainly the message of universality is needed, and this message is universally needed. But as far as you are concerned, the great need is to change your consciousness, dissolve your prejudices, and heal your fears. The truth is for you. It is a practical process by which you can achieve an effective life and at the same time become an effective instrument of love and harmony. Become a center of love. You will become a positive influence in your community, but more important, you will be centered in a circle of protection. In this awareness, no harm can befall you, for anyone coming into your space is lifted into the aura of your consciousness. You can become a center of love. Enough centers of love in the city and around the nation will help evoke wise actions by our government and bring the unified support of the people. Enough centers of love around the world will build bridges of communication and peace. Love is the answer. Namaste.